As I mentioned earlier, we couldn't do all of this without tremendous staff and our sponsors, and so please turn your attention to the screens to see a brief video from the Almond Board of California, who has helped us sponsor this event.
Shipping California almonds to more than 100 countries around the world calls for a dedicated focus on technical issues, regulatory needs, and strong relationships with key stakeholders. The Almond Board of California's Global Technical and Regulatory Affairs team is constantly monitoring issues on a global scale. Leveraging research, technical expertise, and relationships to address dynamic production and market conditions in the U.S. and abroad, the GTRA team keeps the almond industry abreast of important issues with a monthly global update. Top stories from the Global Update are now available in audio form as the Almond Bite. The 5-minute segment contains 3 to 4 updates about current GTRA issues that industry members may otherwise not be aware of. The episodes are served through the Almond Journey podcast channel and can be listened to on all major podcast applications and online at almonds.com. Subscribe and listen today by searching Almond Journey wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, thank you again for that great video and the sponsorship, and I'd like to welcome Richard Waycott, the CEO and President of the Almond Board of California, to join me.
Thank you.
So this is going to be a little bit of a different segment in that we've been honored to have Richard as a supporter and a friend and just a tremendous leader in the industry, but he's going to be retiring at the end of the year. So what better chance to pick his brain about all these wonderful lessons that he's learned over the years. And we've had some discussions about all the various experiences you've had, and 20 minutes isn't going to do it justice. I'm so sorry. I'll wait for the book. But you've already heard him introduced as a legend.
Oh dear, that was embarrassing, so let's not go there. I don't know what Mike was thinking, but yeah.
Oh, I think we all know. We appreciate you very much, Richard. So let's just start out a little bit and take us from this, LA kid who, surfing, skateboarding, then went into agribusiness, mostly in Latin America, and then you have an opportunity to join the Almond Board. What was it that excited you at that time, 21 years ago, that made you think that this was going to be such a great career?
Well, I guess I really didn't know that before I came to the Almond Board, but I'd been working in agribusiness, all sorts of different crops, mostly the big crops, but also some specialty crops. And then came back to the States with my family from Brazil. And I was studying the health food industry and different health products, and soy was really skyrocketing, and different products were being developed, different companies. And I actually made a trip down the West Coast from Seattle down to Los Angeles, visiting various companies. And I got to know more about the nut business, and then when this job became available, really looked into the almond business more specifically. Being from Los Angeles, of course, we grow up not knowing anything about the Central Valley, right? And so the fact that California grows 80% of the world's supply was not something that was known to me before I started studying it, and that it was 70% export, so a very global crop, which fit very well with my background. So it just seemed like a good fit. And I was a little trepidation about going to work for a nonprofit, because I'd always been on the other side, as it were. But I was just a sort of average guy, lucky guy to be in the right place at the right time, and was able to assemble a great team, many of whom are here today, and work with the great industry. And also, I do want to give a special shout out to Roger Wasson, who's here today. Roger at the back, who was my predecessor. So you have 30 years of the almond industry in this room, FYI. But Roger took the industry from 500 million pounds up to $1 billion, which is when I joined in 2002. And then it took us 9 years to get to $2 billion and 9 more years to get to $3 billion. So it's been quite a ride in that sense.
So did you have anybody that was telling you early on, like, hey, this is just going to grow like crazy, and, give you that expectation of how large the industry could have possibly been at the time that you entered it?
No, I think there were certain things that happened over those years. Some were very intentional and very focused and had a lot of strategy built behind them. And other things just evolved in the world, the sort of good fat, bad fat discussion and just healthier foods discussion. And certain diets, of course, came along where nuts fit in well to those. But, the more intentional part was really the focus of the Almond Board in developing the nutritional foundation of human health research that was done over 15 to 20 years, and then being able to figure out how to market that and communicate that to health professionals, food professionals, and ultimately consumers around the world in very global but local sort of applications of that research knowledge.
So what did come first in terms of building the market? I know that you had this mantra of always having demand ahead of the supply, but you mentioned research. Kind of what went into your thinking as you're building up your team and building up the resources to build that demand?
Well, I think we saw early on that we were onto something. When I joined the Almond Board, and Roger, you'll remember this, our logo was "Almonds are in." And it was basically, God damn it, put them in your product, because they'll taste better and they'll crunch and it'll just add a little bit of a specialty nature to your crop. But it wasn't because of what was really in an almond specifically in terms of any content or nutrition. So as time went on, it really we sort of discovered that well beyond just putting it in as an ingredient, there are all these benefits that we can start communicating. We built this health halo basically around almonds that all of a sudden applied right across all the product applications, and so that really was the huge driver, I think, behind the success of the industry over time. And we had a first mover advantage, which we are now sort of really studying again because all the other nuts sort of caught up, and there's all the healthy foods, plant-based foods out there the consumer's just being bombarded with. And so we sort of now have to figure out what is going to be that differentiating factor going forward. But certainly we were first mover advantage on the health front for a long time.
And did you just study other business models in the health food industry to learn from them along the way, or just kind of create as you went?
Well, I think it was a combination of both. I think we saw products, for instance, that worked with the American Heart Association that got the health check, and that seemed to be beneficial for them. Other endorsements as a product from third-party advocates was something that we saw that would be beneficial for us as well. So I think we took a few pages from other playbooks, but largely in our sector, I think it was pretty pioneering work that went on for many years.
It sure seems like it. So talk to us a little bit about corralling the great minds of the growers that you've worked with and trying to build consensus around different themes. For example, on sustainability, quite a buzzword for a long period of time, but you actually were able to build consensus around what that could look like in the industry and also to make it more measurable and to help tell your story.
Yeah, that's quite a journey. I think for most ag industries, you're dealing with a lot of growers. They all come from different sized operations, different levels of sophistication or knowledge, different attitudes, and certainly looking out at sustainability, the S word. For some of them, it's much longer than a 4-letter word, but for some of them, it's analogous maybe. And so we had to sort of find the right spot for our industry and the right timing for moving the right issues about our farming and how we grow our product forward. And I think what we discovered is that there are some very key aspects. Carbon, water, zero waste is sort of where we've ended up. In addition to our self-assessment program, what was called CAS, which has now evolved from the California Almond Sustainability Program to the California Almond Stewardship Platform, because it involves different things. But the huge component of that is the self-assessment program, which now about half of our acres have been self-assessed by the growers, which gives us this wonderful composite information from which we can draw and talk about our industry in really positive ways. So I think it was finding that spot where everybody in quotes, but most people could agree that, these three areas now and others, we can go forward as an industry and develop those with the supply chain, with regulators, et cetera, and that positioning is favorable across, I think, most of the growers and how they view our role in terms of representing the industry with sustainability.
And how necessary was that in terms of your marketing efforts to be able to get across the finish line with a sustainability platform?
Well, I think for those of you that haven't worked in an association like ours, and I think the others are very similar, we're in the middle here, right? So a lot of times we sort of get in this pickle where we have, the regulatory community, we have the CPG companies from around the world, we've got all sorts of interests coming to us, wanting us to say certain things about the industry or try and fulfill their needs and their wants when maybe we're not quite ready to do that, or our industry doesn't necessarily want to go down that road. So it could be a tricky spot sometimes to again, find that sweet spot. One thing we did do in 2018 was we launched the 2025 goals for the industry, which again, you got 10 board members on behalf of 7,600 growers and 100 handlers saying, all right, here are 4 goals for the industry we're going to achieve in was effectively 7 years. And so, that was the first time we'd ever done that. Again, a little bit controversial, but we're going to achieve basically those goals, or 3 out of the 4 by the 2025 deadline. And again, there's a lot of support behind that kind of initiative.
So one of the things that we've had you involved in before is just some of our panel discussions with other industry leaders, but we all know that we're not going to be talking any policy issues. Yet you need to advocate and educate. How have you been able to make that happen in terms of, on behalf of the grower community, educating others and building coalitions around getting your messages out?
Well, it is, and again, we're federal marketing orders, so federal marketing orders are prohibited from advocating or lobbying. And I know when I came in again from private industry, where I'd done quite a bit, and that wasn't my main role, but as running a business unit, sometimes I would be in that function. And it just appeared to me as becoming the largest crop in California, we didn't have an advocate arm to the industry. We had the Almond Hullers and Processors Association, AHPA, which was largely focused on the hullers and shellers. Did a little bit of advocating, but mostly looked after their needs. And Bill Lyons was Secretary of Food and Ag and an almond grower from Modesto. And he came, I invited him to one of our first board retreats to really talk about the fact that we weren't represented very well in Sacramento and in Washington as well. So that just sparked a process where we worked with the HPA on a strategy to become really the advocate for the industry, and that evolved into the Almond Alliance of California that's now led by Aubrey Betancourt, who's probably here today. And so it's really come a long way. In doing that, we worked with the USDA and said, all right, we'll sign a memorandum of agreement between the two organizations. The Alliance pays us a little bit of money so they can use our expertise and our time. And that's the way we sort of got the workaround there and ended up with a really strong advocate arm as well as a really strong, federal marketing order.
Well, there's been such tremendous growth, and obviously your reach is far and wide, not only across the U.S., but internationally, with all the good work that you're doing. Talk a little bit just about the investments in research and how that has played a role, and perhaps coalitions that you've built around that.
Well, I think one of the sort of success stories of the Almond Board over the last 20 years, and certainly going back to Roger's time as well, was that we gradually became much more of a research-centric organization across basically everything we did. Organizations like ours many times can have a lot of subjectivity thrown at them by board members or by committee members or by other industry interests. And that can cause a lot of dysfunction, or it can cause a lot of changes in course that aren't very productive. So over time, we've really built a discipline around research and fact-based knowledge. And that's really helped us make, I think, really good long-term decisions, build strategies, and execute those. Obviously, production research, environmental research, food safety research, human nutrition research has been a huge one, but also in the consumer side. So we study consumers and markets as much as we do agricultural issues, so that hopefully, again, we develop the right strategies and make the right decisions.
So let's get into just a little bit of the secret sauce, so to speak, about leadership and some of the lessons that you've learned along the way. I know that you've built, obviously, a very good team, but talk to us a little bit about the importance of strategy and the other top things for anybody else in this room who maybe aspires to be a CEO or a leader of an organization.
Well, definitely team is huge, and I think, and there's a big table over there with many of them sitting there. I think, hiring the best people and having that ability to hire those people and then let them do their job is a big part of this, and be there, to advise and to set strategy, but really let them do their jobs and if they're not doing them well, then we'll talk about it. But I think in my experience, it's been well. At the board level, again, these are all volunteers. They're not paid board members. We buy them lunch once in a while and take them on a trip sometimes, but that's about it. So you want, the right skill sets at the board level, hopefully, even though they're elected by the industry, so you can't prescribe that. But I think then it's really making sure they're focused on the job they need to do, and that is really to set the strategy for the organization and for the industry. Make those really high-level decisions, and then as I do with my staff, at least I think I do, you guys, I'd really try and let them do their jobs. And then our committees, we have 6 committees where basically all the decisions and all the tactics are developed and so on, and let them do the job. And at that level, we really do. We have specific job descriptions for each committee, specific skill sets we try and get with the volunteers that serve on those committees, so that they can really get into the weeds and do their job. And then evaluate the results at the board level when we're done. So that's sort of been my approach.
Well, one of the other things that you mentioned you like to include is to have a blast. So how do you incorporate fun in all this stuff?
Well, life is short, and I think that's, I think most good CEOs have a good time at what they're doing, and I think that spreads joy and, some happiness around too with the staff and with the industry. So I've always tried to make sure I'm having a good time, and I think if I'm having a good time, then I hope everyone else is too.
So does it help that you eat this, package of almonds every day that you go to work?
Yeah, I have my 23 almonds every day. So, and after I leave the almond board, that will remain my habit. So.
Good. So just last question. I know there's so many highlights of the people that you've worked with and the experiences and travel you've had. I like going to your convention and seeing something new every year about, whether it's a mock TV show with news and things that you've done. Tell us some of the things that you found as most enjoyable, just as we wrap up here.
Well, I've always been an international guy, so I've just loved the global nature of this business. I've also worked with growers and farmers across various industries, and I've loved that part of it too. I think one thing that's kept me at the Almond Board has not only been all the challenges and the growth and the fun, but it's also been the fact that we've tripled in size at least, and yet we're still a family business, And so the growers that I know, even if they're large ones, it's family business, and I love that aspect of our industry. It hasn't lost that aspect. And then around the world too, I've just, all the companies we deal with are mostly family owned, and so it's just really a wonderful relationship building experience that I've had, and I've really enjoyed that.
Well, Richard, we're going to enjoy working with you until your retirement and wish you the very best after that. And so thank you for sharing just some of your insights with us today. Please join me in thanking him also.